Dio finds himself in a place that looks like heaven. There, a man tells him that this isn't the afterlife. The man adds that it has been a long time since he last had a visitor. Dio remembers that he died in an accident and asks if the man is God, but the man says he is not. To put it in terms Dio would understand, an angel would be the closest description. Dio decides to label him as Fake Michael for now. Dio says he understands he's being reincarnated, but wonders what he should do once his new life begins. The man replies that he can live however he pleases, as there's no agenda or mission assigned to him. In that case, Dio says he would love to live a slow, peaceful life. The man explains that the world Dio will be reincarnating into is full of magic, with about 20% of humans able to cast spells. Dio's most compatible element is water. Since he requested a slow life, they will place him in a forest, where a house and 2 months' worth of food will be waiting for him. There will also be a magically made ice house for storing food, and the house will have a protective barrier to keep monsters away. Once inside, Dio discovers manuals about the world. He can read them despite never having seen the language before. Soon he begins experimenting with water magic. If he can picture what he wants to do, he doesn't need to speak an incantation. Though he's always thought incantations were cool. He tries to conjure a hot bath, but the water comes out only lukewarm. He then attempts to heat the water with fire magic, but fails miserably. Deciding to use sunlight instead, he realizes he needs a lens, which means he must make ice. Freezing water with magic turns out to be harder than expected, but he's determined. He would love to cast an ice pure spell someday. Using his knowledge of water and ice chemistry, he manages to freeze the water, shape it into the lens he needs, and finally start a fire. After finally getting to enjoy his hot bath, he remarks that it was a pretty productive first day. He figures he can probably make hot water if he applies the same logic he used to create ice, just in reverse. There's still plenty to do tomorrow. Michael prepared 2 months' worth of food for him, which means that once his supply runs out, he will have to start hunting. The forest lies beyond the barrier, and that means monsters. He doubts a single knife will be enough to defend himself, so he decides he's going to need offensive magic. If he wants a safe, slow life, he better start practicing now. He experiments with various water-based attacks, but they lack the power to be considered real attacks. Struggling, he recalls the advice Michael gave him when he once asked how to use magic. The foundation of magic is imagination. He needs to clearly picture what he's aiming for and work toward it over time. Gradually, his water attacks improve. Along the way, he also manages to create hot water. Then he moves on to producing ice directly from thin air, without first turning it into water. It's not fast, but it's doable. This leads him to his main goal for offensive ice magic, Icicle Lance. However, he quickly learns that ice is harder to project than water. Between the difficulty of creating it and its short range, he doubts it will be very useful in real combat. Still, practice makes perfect. After a while, he starts feeling faint, possibly from mana depletion. At night, he realizes he cannot create fire the same way he does during the day once the sun sets. Several days later, he can now form icicles instantly. They still don't have much range, but it's finally time to venture beyond the barrier. During his adventure, he comes across quartz, which will let him start fires even after dark. Just then, he comes face to face with a lesser boar. With no choice but to dodge its attacks, he suddenly remembers he has magic. Even without proper projectiles, he manages to use his abilities cleverly to take the creature down. Lesser boars are considered the weakest monsters out there, so the fact that he only just managed to defeat one makes it clear. He needs to get a lot stronger. In the books he was given, 2 monsters are described as the absolute strongest. The first is the dragon, a creature capable of destroying entire cities with ease. The book warns that if you encounter one, your only option is to flee, though the chances of escape are slim. Simply crossing paths with a dragon is essentially game over. The second is something called an akuma. Its origins are unknown, but the book specifies they are not fallen angels. Instead, it advises to pray you never meet one. From this, Dio realizes that this world must be enormous. The next day, he's suddenly attacked by an incredibly fast bird, which he describes as a huge jump in difficulty. He runs from it, throwing up ice shields to block its attacks until it finally gives up and leaves him alone. However, while fleeing, he loses track of the direction to his house. Later that night, he spots a headless suit of armor moving on its own in the middle of a lake. Oddly, this discovery is set aside for the moment, as the story shifts to a montage of Rio's battles with various monsters. He can now shape ice and water into projectiles sharp enough to cut through thick rock. At night, he returns to observe the suit of armor. The book he was given makes no mention of anything like it, leading him to wonder if it even counts as a monster. Eventually, he begins fighting it, but at first he stands no chance. Still, he senses a reason for coming here every night. It is as if the armor is challenging him to improve. One day, the armor hands him its sword, which Dio takes as a sign that it wants him to master it. The next day, the bird from before returns for a second round. Its abilities are far stronger, suggesting it evolved to take revenge for the eye Dio injured in their first encounter. After a tough battle, Dio finally manages to defeat it. He reflects that this fight helped him grow stronger. He had been training in anticipation of its return. Just then, a dragon swoops down right in front of Dio. Speaking through telepathy, the dragon explains that it had been hoping to ask Dio something. Had he encountered a bird that evolved from an assassin hawk? Dio says he has. The dragon quickly realizes that Dio has actually killed the creature, a most impressive feat. His attention then shifts to the rare weapon at Dio's waist, and he recognizes it as the sword of the Fairy King. If the Fairy King entrusted such a weapon to Dio, then Dio must have done something to earn his favor. Dio admits he couldn't really say, but he had been hoping to ask the dragon a few questions of his own. The two talk for quite some time until the dragon excuses himself, explaining that he's being summoned elsewhere. Dio thanks him for all the information he shared and asks for his name. The dragon introduces himself as Lewin. Dio never imagined he would one day have a conversation with a dragon. Meanwhile, Michael notices a huge oversight on his part. It turns out that, aside from his water affinity, Dio also possesses a hidden trait. But why? No one has had such a trait since the girl Michael first sent to another world, and that was over 10,000 years ago. In Dio's case, the hidden trait is eternal youth.